everyone. My name is Lindsay Riegelsberger. I am the Operations Manager and Marketing Specialist for Streamline Government Contracts. Streamline helps small to medium-sized government contractors who seek experienced, effective support with contract management that will reduce risks, increase profits, and enhance reputations. We do this by negotiating teaming agreements, subcontracts, preparing estimates of completion when necessary, and speaking to contracting officers in their own language. We are the proud organizers of Government Contractor Chat, and we thank you for joining us today. I'm going to go ahead and introduce our guest speaker now. Jill Ryan is the founder and principal consultant of Gadfly, a PMO as a service consulting company. She is a seasoned federal program and project manager with a passion for customer satisfaction and solving problems. In sync with ISO and other quality programs, she aligns customer feedback approach of the contractor performance assessment reporting process with continuous improvement of quality to glean the most value for your business and your customers. Without further ado, let's welcome Jill Ryan.
Great. Thank you, Lindsay. And thank you, everyone. Streamline's team. I am excited to talk to you about CPARS. First question I would like to ask is, what is your mindset when you receive a CPAR notice? The instinctive response to receiving a CPAR is to reflect on the past, the contract that is being evaluated. Then we might say, well, yes, Mr. Customer, thank you very much. I agree. It's a great pleasure to work with you, and we look forward to doing business with you again. The mind shift that we need to work on is in putting ourselves in the position of the proposal evaluator for your next bid. What do they see about your performance? And does this evaluation actually share the right story of how well you delivered? What does it say to your next CO as to how you will deliver for them? If it's not telling the right story, is there anything that you can do about it? I say the answer is yes. Great, you say, how do we do that? And that's really what I'm here to talk about today. To get started, let's break down exactly what the CPAR is. I'm sure you've all had experience with it, but a lot of times we don't really dive into it and know all the details. So the Contractor Performance Assessment Reporting System, CPARS, it's not plural, it is actually a system, or cpars.gov. And the intent behind CPARS is to provide a space for objective performance evaluations. They contain both government and contractor comments to provide a balanced view of performance. Now, all who gets a CPAR, all simplified acquisitions over $250,000 and construction-specific awards over $750,000 will receive a CPAR evaluation. And there are debates as to how useful these are, but remember that the value you get out of a tool is directly related to what you put into it. And CPARs have often been viewed as something that we contractors have little control over. I had the opportunity to speak with Shauna Weatherly in preparation of today, and she is the founder of Federal Subcontract Solutions and spent decades in government contracting offices as a CO and also a former chief of contracts. She gave me a lot of valuable information. I'm going to quote her throughout the day with little tidbits. But the one thing that she did say is that our response, our CPARs actually reflect the partnership that we have with our customer and our contracting team. And that really is why it is important. In essence, this evaluation is your Yelp or your Google review for government contracts. And the purpose is to provide that performance evaluation to contracting officers who are considering awarding you a contract. Bid evaluators are required to look at all sources when considering a proposal. If CPARs are out there, which CPARs actually do live out there for at least 3 years, then they will look at those and not just your PPQs or your proposal. This allows the source selection officials to look beyond your references. And we all know that we put our best foot forward in our bids, but CPARS is another tool that the source selection team can use to inform their decision. So it really is an opportunity for each of us. Breaking down further, what are the elements? And really we're looking at the categories and the ratings. While the FAR outlines details of the process and protocols of CPARS, it's unlikely that any of us have time or energy to really get fully ensconced. I recognize this is a time factor, and in the vein of diminishing returns, let's look at some of the points that may carry the most value with minimal effort to get started on ratings and comments. Each contract is rated on these individual categories. There is not one single rating that rolls up for the whole contract. For instance, you don't get a satisfactory on a contract. You get a satisfactory in quality or schedule or whatever the rating is. And it's rated on a scale of exceptional to unsatisfactory. Also, each of the CPARs contain comments from both the government and the contractor representative, i.e. you. I took the liberty of pulling the FY25 rating statistics, and here are 4 of the categories that are kind of the big bang for your time buck based on all the CPARs that were submitted in financial year 23. And as small business prime contractors, the goal here is to differentiate ourselves in a bid situation. And it's clear the most popular rating column is satisfactory. One way to look at it is satisfactory basically is our minimum performance that says we followed the contract and we deliver what we said we would deliver and we're going to get paid. That's the best thing. But looking at this as a tool for our next bid, we really need to differentiate ourselves. And for that, we need to be thinking about how we add value. If we can find a way to put ourselves into the very good column or the exceptional columns, then we're objectively showing that we are adding value beyond the terms of the contract to the benefit of the government. Now, you might think that that's a really weird thing to say, and I'll say that it is because it's a paraphrase of the actual FAR text. And the FAR provides guidance on what justifies each of these ratings, high and low, and what evidence is needed in order to get there. So one of the things, when you look at FAR 42.15 and look at table 42-1, this tells us all of the ratings, what the definition is, and the notes to justify it. When talking with Shauna, one thing that really made clear is that as a core on a government contract, she gave very few exceptionals, a few more very goods, and mostly satisfactory, but she's also had to give many marginals. And before the FAR 4215 was put in place, which she was a CO at the time that this came about, exceptionals were handed out as if they were candy. It's no longer a popularity contest. It really, each evaluation has to be justified. You can't just give a rating on how they feel. So this table goes into else and is really a must get familiar with if we're going to use this tool. From the definition, it says a performance in the exceptional column. The performance meets the contractual requirements and exceeds many to the government's benefit. And I say many, if you look at the very good, it says the exact same phrase, only it says exceeds some of the requirements to the government's benefit. And to justify it, the contracting officer needs to write in what an exceptional rating is by identifying multiple significant events and state how they were the benefit of the government. So they can't just say, yay, Mr. Contractor, you did a great job. That's not good enough. They actually have to cite examples. And when we think about how much work that is, how many contracting officers actually do that? But if we as contractors are armed with this information, we can set ourselves up for success. So how, you might ask? Let's get proactive. I have a 3-step plan to help us do that. First step, know the process. Understanding the CPAR process will help you be prepared for each step along the way, and will also help you be proactive. You don't need a PhD in it. You just need to know the key components and the timeline. One thing to remember is, and I have a link here, which I'm going to share the links that I'm talking about later in the presentation. I'll put them in the chat when we're done. But the CPARS guidance document linked at the bottom of this is critical, just to give you a reference point to know what this process is and what the government officials are being asked to do. This is their process, they're trained in it, and they're graded on it. So as soon as you receive your award, it's passed over and registered into the CPARS system. At the end, and then it kind of, as far as the CPARS system goes, it goes to about day 335 of a 12-month POP. Then it starts putting alerts into the assessing officer's queue because they own it. It's at the end of the POP where the ratings and narratives are added. The assessing official, and yes, by the way, there you have a contracting officer and then you have an assessing officer. They are not always the same person, so we need a new acronym for that. So you have to get to know and translate your acronyms. They will review it, sign it, send it off to you in draft form, and you get an opportunity to review it, add comments, indicate your concurrence, and then send it back to the contracting officer for them to complete the process. There are many steps along the way, and we're going to dig a little deeper into that because it seems like, well, how much control do we really have once this has happened? Step 2 is getting proactive. And this is where we start from the moment of award thinking about our CPAR. And it's not just our CPAR, we're going to deliver the contract. But the first thing is during the POP, once you receive that award, take a look at the award and find out what you are being measured on. We need to remember that CPARs are to do for the contracting team, but for you, they can be a key differentiator. Shauna actually shared with me that some contracting officers are managing between 50 and 100 contracts at any given time. And that is a lot of work, and they're not going to know the details of how you're performing day to day. That's going to be up to you to make sure that they are aware when they're doing the evaluation. Recognizing this simple fact, as good consultants, we want to make sure their lives are easier. So I like to start right at the kickoff or shortly after. I want to meet with my contracting team, not just my project team, but make sure your core, your government task lead, your contract specialist, and your CO are together and you actually agree the expectations. Know what you're being evaluated on as objective metrics from a contract perspective. That could be in your QAS, the Quality Assurance Surveillance Plan, or could be called a performance metrics. I've noticed a number of different titles within different contracts. And note that it's not always the same as a project deliverable. The contract metrics are different than the actual product or service that you're providing. So coming to an agreement and making sure everyone understands what you're being measured on from a contract perspective is really important. Second thing you want to do is agree on a communication plan. How often does your contracting officer want to hear from you? How much would be helpful versus not enough? What do you want to meet with them? I would like to see it as a quarterly meeting because it is about the relationship. But some may say it's biannual, or be careful of the ones that say just attach your monthly status report to the invoice. We don't know if they read it. So it's up to us to make sure that our evaluators know the work that we're doing and know the value that we're bringing. Now, many POPs are 12 months duration, and that's a long time to remember all the great things that you might have done that might warrant high ratings. In fact, it's human nature to only remember the negative or the stressful situations. So from day one, set your internal process to start keeping a log. What did you do well? Particularly if you went above and beyond the terms of the contract. And we're not asking you to deliver something free for the government or gold plate any project, but note, say, here's an example of going above and beyond. Let's say whatever you're delivering, there is another government program that actually is dependent on your work or you're dependent on their work and they're stuck. They become a blocker for you. Now, technically, that is, you're waiting for them to deliver. But if you find a creative solution that can help them overcome their blocker and therefore lets you get your project back on time, that is something that is going above and beyond the terms of your contract. It's a little bit outside that. and it's to the benefit of the government. That's a specific incident, so that when you are recording the multiple incidences, you have that evidence right there. If you do that in month 1, I guarantee you by month 6, you might forget it. And by month 11, it may be gone for history and you've lost that opportunity. So keep a log. The other question is, what does not go so well? And yes, it is actually a good idea to highlight things that don't go well, because how you respond to it is going to tell the next contracting officer that's evaluating you or considering you how well you deal with things that go wrong. I mean, of course, we're always going to bid perfect service, but rarely is a service perfectly delivered. Things do go wrong. We can't stop nature from happening. So remembering that this is a partnership and that we're developing it, we want to say, we want to stay engaged and note that we are being responsive. One of the sad observations that Shauna gave me is that, and I'm going to quote her here, and let me read this. You can do great work, but if I have to pull your teeth to get you to do it right, you complain when errors are pointed out, or you're slow to respond, you're giving yourself that marginal, not me. That points to the fact that we really are the owners of our own evaluation if we are performing and developing that relationship and making sure that we are listening to our customer and performing on the contract. The second piece of this is near the end of the POP. Perform what I like to refer to as a self-assessment with, and if they're amenable to it, share it with them in an open discussion. Now, if you're an ISO 9001 certified company, then you've got a customer feedback section of your quality management. This could be part of that. And what you want to do is evaluate yourself using the same model as the CPAR. Take a stab at it. How well do you think you did? And can you justify it? Looking at that table 42, did you go above and beyond on some, on many, or maybe you just got satisfactory? And what evidence can you present to justify that? If you write that down, then the next opportunity is just before the end of the POP. You get the opportunity to refresh in the contracting team's mind the work that you've done, how you performed, what went well, what may not have gone well, but you rebounded and recovered to deliver. These are opportunities to shine and to tell your story again to your next contracting team. The other thing that I have found is just doing these self-assessments, the customers are actually quite open to doing the discussion. And I ask them, I say, okay, I want to know if you'd agree with this. Here's what I think I did. Do you agree? We have great discussions. And I also ask them, is there anything that I missed that I could do better in serving you? And that speaks volumes in building the relationship with my government team. I did this with one customer, and that ended up resulting in us winning the recompete to continue serving that customer because the relationship was so strong and the service was differentiated. We truly added value. Once we get to the end of the POP, that's when the CPAR process does happen, and we are at the liberty of our government team to get that done. They have up to 100 days to perform that evaluation once the period of performance closes. So the assessing officer will gather information from the contracting team and the performance team. They will write up their evaluation and they will sign it and send it to the contractor representative for a review. This is the draft. And one thing on knowing the timeline here is the clock starts ticking, and the next 14 days, calendar days, are really, really critical. After day 15, whether you have commented or not, the assessing officer can close that CPAR and make it public. So whatever they've said, that's golden, that's it. At that point, changing anything or augmenting it becomes a little bit more difficult. Now, you do have up to 60 days to add comments, but if there's a situation where you don't agree with the assessment or there's some concern, that 14-day window is the time to make that correction. As soon as you receive that, review the draft. Did they use boilerplate text or did they write details? If they used boilerplate, I've even seen CPARS where they've cut and pasted from the actual table 42 a description of what it means to meet it. That's not going to tell your story. That's just, did you meet the terms of the contract? There's nothing unique about your particular delivery. This is your opportunity to add detail. If they did add detail, how well does it tell the story? What did they say? Is there something more? The next part is your response. You have the option to concur or not concur, and you have the option to add comments for each individual category as well as overall. And this all comes together in how you respond. The interesting thing, most small businesses don't respond at all. And I believe that this is a missed opportunity. Now, if you're, no matter what, whether they used boilerplate or detailed information, concur. If you agree with the assessment, you can, but look at their details. You have the opportunity to still add comments. Take a look at that self-assessment that you did. Is the write-up that you did, can you augment the description of your performance? Augment what the contracting officer put in there. Is there something they didn't highlight that you think might be relevant for that particular performance to the next contract bid? It could add value to you. Something that you may have done special, but it may not change your rating, but the evaluation, the text is there and may be a key. If you don't concur, if there's something very, very negative, this is your opportunity. This is where the relationship is absolutely key. A lot of small businesses don't feel comfortable hitting the not concur button because they feel like it's going to be a challenge or a negative. But if you have built that relationship, you can pick up the phone and say, hey, can we talk about that? Because I want to kind of not concur. You have to not concur in the system in order to trigger a review and a possible change. So I had a situation where we did the self-assessment and working with the project team. Oh my goodness, they were just beyond glowing in their review. They agree with our assessment. In fact, they would have increased the ratings that we rated ourselves. It was fantastic. Then we got the CPAR, and it was boilerplate and straight down the line satisfactory. We were like, wait a second, what's up? So our account manager, who had the best relationship with the contracting officer, picked up the phone and said, hey, we just had this conversation and we feel that we could get a little bit better. Would you mind reviewing it? And we shared some details, adding into the comments section and sending it back for that re-review. The CPAR was then updated. Ratings were changed. Now, you can't tell the contracting officer what ratings to give, but you can give them justifications. Say, I think I deserve this rating because of A, B, C, and D. Those specifics are key in order to justify the rating. And if they agree, they're going to increase your rating. After all that work, well, you did. You still got just as satisfactory. It happens. Remember, satisfactory is that column that is most populated. And satisfactory is still satisfactory. It's still a good job. You performed well. But the key thing here is to remember that the comments tell the story. If you provided good comments into your CPAR, remember to add those keywords, those search engine optimization. What are you going to do that's going to serve your next bid? Help that tell the story. Then make sure that you remember your GTL and your core, maintain that relationship with them, because in your next bid, while some RFQs and RFPs specify who can fill out the PPQ, there are sometimes the opportunity that a GTL or a core can fill that out if the CO is not available. And they're really the ones you work with day to day, and they know your performance. They know how well you did. They know what your struggles are, and they can speak better to your strengths and weaknesses. So that piece is going to go along with the PPQ to go into your next bid evaluation. Now, I kind of fire hosed you with a lot of stuff here. Just remember, I'll put these links in the chat, but I wanted to mention two other things before I hand it back for questions. And that is the cparsystem.gov. cpars.gov is a valuable resource, has a lot of training, both for you and for your government counterparts. And understand what training they're being asked to do. really actually evaluation is your government counterpart's job to do, but you can help them. So help them help you by giving them information and reminding them of the great stuff that you did during the performance of the contract. The CPAR guidance document is an excellent resource. It's a quick reference, have it handy so that you know what's happening and what the timeline is. And in fact, if it changes, you want to know that. The FAR link, I'll send that out as well as scroll down to that table 42-1 and know your ratings. You really have to know what they are so that you know how you're being evaluated. That's going to help you provide the right evidence and know what works and what's not going to work. So last thing I will say as part of Gadfly, I do have a program to help you if your company would like to develop a self-assessment program to support your CPARS. That is something that I can work with your team to fit it in. If you're ISO certified, we can work that into your QMS and really reduce risk and promote those great things that you're doing. And of course, our other services are all things related to program and project management. I'll take a breath and hand it back to Lindsay for any questions.
Thank you, Jill. That was a great presentation. If you would like to come on camera, if you have any questions, we can do that now. In the meantime, I have some questions for you, Jill. So what if my CO doesn't do a contractor performance assessment report?
The best thing to do is working on that self-assessment, give them a call, work with them, ask them if they're going to get it done. Ultimately, you can't force anyone to do it. But out of all of the CPARs presented, a very small fraction actually did not do the CPAR.
Okay, understood. How do I find the metrics for evaluation?
That's a good one. This one is going to take a look at your award contract. So typically you have the different sections in the award. Go to the latter half of it before you get into all the FAR clauses is typically where I find it. You're going to have the word performance or quality. If you did a search on those two words, it's going to lead you there. Ultimately, though, I know that Streamline, your professionals can help you find that information. And once you find it once or twice, in the Midwest, we like to go mushroom hunting. Once you know how to find the mushrooms, it gets a lot easier. Same with those performance metrics. Once you start knowing what to look for, it's going to come through.
Okay, sounds good. And how about the quality assurance surveillance plans and other performance metrics?
The quality assurance surveillance plan is a specific table. A lot of times it's going to be very simplistic and it's objectively metric. Did you send your invoices? Did you send your status? Did you send a monthly status on time? Sometimes it will have, if you're doing software, it's going to have metrics on your uptime as an example. It will be specific deliverables. But if you're doing an implementation that has a timeline and deliverables, that's typically project related. So those are going to be two separate types of things.
Okay, understood. What do I do if my CO doesn't want to meet regularly?
You can't force them. I would focus the relationship on the contracting officer representative, the core, and the GTL. If your CO doesn't, the next person, your core is going to have their ear. And a lot of times the contracts, the COs, if they're dealing with 50 to 100 contracts, they're going to first reach out to the core and say, hey, how did we do on this contract? Can you give me the starter text or can you give me your evaluation before I finish the CPAR? They're going to lean on them for that major piece of input. So if you don't have a strong relationship with the CO, definitely keep your contracting team engaged.
Okay, sounds good. Regarding less than satisfactory ratings, what if a contractor gets a marginal or unsatisfactory rating?
Well, that could be a topic in and of itself that requires greater action. One thing I would say is I'm hoping that before you get to a marginal state on your CPAR, that you've already known that there's something going on in the contract. So the best answer I can have with that is before you get there, avoid that risk. Maintaining the relationship with your contracting officer and also finding out how you're doing. It's like Shauna said, if I have to pull your teeth, if there's an error or something that they're not happy with, if you don't provide an appropriate response, even if you're still negotiating, how you respond to things that don't go well is going to judge whether or not your CPAR comes through. I have had things happen. It's a reality. I have had very, very challenging situations that technically could have justified a marginal. But because we were working through the issues, because we had a strong relationship with the contracting team, they knew what we were doing. We received satisfactory on that option period, and we made the correction in the next option period. So the best approach for a marginal is to avoid it. If you do receive a marginal, I would say get in touch with that contracting team as soon as possible. Talk about it. Find out if there's some, have that review. Is it justified, or is there something you can add in the comments to soften it? And then, of course, if you need to, there are other contracting tools that you can use that are beyond my professional skills. You can ask legal teams that specialize in helping with negative CPARS and how to respond to that, because I know that that can have a detrimental effect on the business. And contracting officers are not trying to ruin you. They really are trying to give an effective valuation.
Yes, agreed. That's fantastic, Jill. Thank you so much. So those are all the questions I've had come in. If any of you would like to pop anything in the chat, I'll just give it one more minute here. Are you able to see other companies' CPARs, Jill?
That is a very, very good question. And the answer, thank goodness, no. The only people who can see CPARs are those authorized on the government side evaluating bids to see other CPARs. The other thing to look at is to see your own CPARs. On CPARS.gov, check out something called a focal point and an alternate focal point. Because the one thing I will say, who the CPAR notice goes to is inconsistent. And if you have an account manager who may have left your company a few months ago, the government, unless it was changed in the CPAR system, that's who would get that notice. And this clock starts ticking. So the focal point will give you, your CEO, the authority to go in and see all the CPARs that have come in and monitor that situation. But no, fortunately, that's sensitive information, and CPARs are only shared with evaluating contracting officers and evaluation teams.
Thank you, Jill. That was a great Q&A session. Our Government Contractor Chat complimentary Zoom webinar series will be the third Wednesday of each month, excluding holidays, from 12 p.m. to 1 p.m. Eastern Time. Wednesday, May 15th, we will have Diane Menser, Business Operations and COO Advisor at Diane Integrates, presenting 6 under-the-radar KPIs are impacting the value of your company. Wednesday, June 12th, we will have Vikesh Sharma, Technical Program Manager and Federal PSO at Google, presenting how AI can impact federal contracting work. This will be the second Wednesday in June as we observe the Juneteenth holiday. Wednesday, July 17th, we will have Rebecca Link, Proposal SME with Mastering and Blending the Capabilities of AI with the Power of People, presenting Proposal Center AI Adoption and Implementation. To register for these webinars, you can scan the QR code on the screen now. Thank you for your time today. We hope to see you in May.